Ladies and gentlemen, watching today's podcast, this is one I've been looking forward to for many, many weeks. Good afternoon, everybody. Those that are listening on Spotify, watching on YouTube, I'm delighted to introduce Emma Pinnock, our special guest today. Emma is the CEO, the director of a very exciting organization that specializes in SEND, supporting leaders and classroom practitioners enhance and optimize SEND provision and looking after every child in every school across the country. So I'm going to ask Emma very shortly to introduce ourselves. But we are here today. This podcast is going to be about focusing on SEND, the ever-changing landscape of SEND, to be exact. So the ever-changing landscape of SEND is what we're here to talk about today in this podcast. And on that note, Emma, good afternoon. Lovely to see you. You know, I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. I'm good, thank you. Good afternoon. Apart from the rain, it is Friday. So that's even better, isn't it? So good afternoon. It's great to be here. And I've also been looking forward to this call. So thank you for having me.
Great. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Emma, your background, your history. I know it's extensive, it's exciting. Just for your viewers and your listeners today, let's just learn a little bit about Emma.
I won't want to take up the whole podcast. so I'll only give you a little bit. But yeah, Emma Pinnock, that's me. My background is a teacher, but back before that, I'm a psychologist. And so before I wanted to, when I went into the classroom, it wasn't actually about teaching at the point for me. It was actually to become an educational psychologist. That was the trajectory that I was on. However, classrooms are very special places. And so therefore it captured me for 20 years plus. And that's where I was. However, as a result of being a psychologist, my aim was always around children who were not learning in typical ways. I always found those children with barriers really interesting because I really wanted to understand why those barriers were there, which obviously then pushed me firmly into the special needs world, where a lot of my practice and the majority of my work career basically developed and flourished. So in all that time that I have been in education, the majority of that has been in the special needs world. My last in-classroom role was the head of an autism resource base, where I supported local children from the local authority to develop their skills and at that point access mainstream provision. However, that picture has changed so much now and it's so different. So in terms of all of that, my skills from all of that background has now developed the Essential Education Group, which is an auditing, consultancy and training company where I support schools to think deeply, to be curious, to really think about how they're going to create in a very changing landscape. So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's great. And everybody, please have a look at Emma's website and have a look around Essential Education Group. And Emma will be telling us a little bit more about the services that you can help your schools and MATs with later in the podcast. Emma, I'm going to ask you an odd question. Is there a typical day? Is 2 days ever the same?
Never. Yesterday I was in London. The day before that, I was in a school in Birmingham, my hometown. And yesterday I was speaking. Before that, it was consultancy. Other times I'm supporting families. So no day is typical, which is what I like, actually. I really like that. One, it actually helps me to grow because this world is so vast. This special educational needs world is so vast. And why it is so complex is because everybody's experience is so unique. And so the more that I am out there doing lots of different things, the more I understand that uniqueness, and it just enriches everything that I do and enriches my understanding of everything. So yeah, so the day in the life of it, I'm very exhausted, put it that way. I'm tired.
As the old saying goes, knowledge is power.
It sure is. Yeah.
Right. So let's just flip over to the actual landscape. We know it's very difficult, challenging, ever evolving. Let's go straight into that now. So from your vast experience, the schools and MATs that you work with, the parents that you support and the children themselves, what do you feel the actual current, so the live landscape within schools and MATs is in regards to special educational needs and disabilities?
It's complex. And I think every school is experiencing it slightly differently. Every school is in a different part of the journey. Some schools have been seeing their cohorts changing for 10 years plus. Some schools have been seeing their cohorts changing in the last 2. And so it's a very wide picture, and that means people are catching up in different ways. I think what's happened a lot in schools is that subject knowledge, staff confidence hasn't caught up with the changing picture. And that is for nobody's fault, by the way, because actually the changing picture is very vast. What we've got happening in mainstream schools at the moment is that children that may have historically been in special schools are potentially being admitted into mainstream schools, and which is not bad in itself. It isn't, but there's no foundation or understanding of that for a lot of mainstream schools, and so people are trying to work on that on their feet. And I think that changing landscape has caused a lot of concern for leaders in education. We could get political about it, but also there hasn't been the funding to support these changes. There hasn't been the CPD backing that's been needed to be able to support the confidence. And there's also been a shift from lots of support staff in schools and lots of these mechanisms that may have been able to help with this changing picture have been evolving at the same time. So it's kind of become a bit of a perfect storm for schools, really. And I think leaders are trying to catch their breath with it and truly understand how they can create a truly inclusive response, which is actually a big task.
That's very interesting indeed. I think that dovetails nicely into our kind of next component, which is, again, let's talk about you're in a school, you're talking to the head, the deputy, the assistant head, you're talking to the Senko, you're observing children, you're helping everybody. What do you see as being the most common problems, the most common challenges, roadblocks in regards to effectively managing and having a fantastic provision for SEND learners? So what do you see, what do you hear, what do you observe, what are you involved with? What are these key problems and challenges?
I think I can name 3 off the top of my head and I'll go through them. Knowledge, definitely. Vision, definitely. And capacity. I'll start at the knowledge point. I, as a teacher, went in with a psychologist background. So I was focused on these barriers, and that was where my interest lay. However, for so many teachers, they might be interested in English and they may be interested in maths or science, or if they're primary, more general learning. So they may not come to it from a neuroscience, psychological point of view, which is actually what's needed right now. We need to understand the psychology of learning in order to truly support the children that we have coming through our doors right now. When we think about the mental health side of things, when we think about the structure side of things, when we think about the neurodivergent side of things, this is all underpinned by psychology. And I think that's one of the knowledge gaps that our teachers do have. Again, nobody's fault. It's just part of how the system has been. And I think we need to really understand how to support that knowledge gap and then also then translate it into practice. So a lot of the training at the moment focuses on adapted teaching, which is fantastic. But what I find is if that we don't understand the why that we're doing these strategies, they fall off so quickly. I always joke with my schools that I'm going to actually create a t-shirt that says, "Where are your visuals?" And I'm going to walk around going like this.
I'd write that for you.
I think I might get one. I think I might do it. Because it's such a crucial element of supporting different learners that it's the one thing that drops off because that's not the way that we communicate. And so it's about, but that if you know why you're using them, you're more likely to keep them in place. And I think that's really, really key. Capacity, that is self-explanatory. When we think about the capacity in our schools, when the responses, the outcomes that we are focused on are not conducive to inclusive learning all the time. It was very positive to see some of the curriculum changes being more reflective of some of those outcomes and giving a little bit more flexibility in the system. We need more. We definitely need more. But there was a little bit of flexibility coming into this new curriculum that's been released by the government recently, which might help people to feel that they don't have to be so narrow focused on a particular outcome, because that does reduce the ability to be inclusive. And I think the final one, which is the most important one, is a vision. All right. So when we talk about education at the moment, if a child is mainstream and is able to go through the steps of mainstream education, there's a very clear path. There's a very clear vision. Parents know the child might go to university. Parents know that college is there. There's all these different options because there is a vision. When a child learns uniquely or has a very distinct need or disability, there is no vision and no path. And so therefore, practice becomes hit and miss. Practice doesn't actually get underneath the layers that are necessary because we don't know where we're taking the children. And so when I work with schools, I create vision with them. If you've got this new cohort in your school, you now know that these children are distinct to the other children that you have. What vision are we going to create for them? How are they going to leave you? And we create that picture, because if we can create that picture, we then know what the steps are to that picture. It doesn't have to be a mainstream outcome, but it has to be an outcome. And I think that's really missing in the system at the moment. I'm hoping with the new white paper that comes in the future that there may be some bones to that helps to create vision. But I think that vision of understanding how unique learners become more independent and more autonomous is actually really key.
Really interesting. And I think from what we hear at the Education Showroom, executing that vision and sticking to it and making sure it is the vision and not chopping and changing, which obviously that is creating a vision and then adjusting the vision. And then was it really a vision in the first place? It was adjusting and chopping and changing all the time. So I think in terms of, feedback and challenges that school and MAP leaders have, which we then come to you with, we had a vision, we didn't fulfill it properly, we've always firefighting, staff are coming and going. There's a check with that coming and going of staff. There's always a changing experience and skill sets. And maybe the person that mapped out or was instrumentally mapping out that vision is no longer there. So there's another vision that's been formulated. So I love what you're saying about the vision and then the execution and the consistency and making that vision stick, having the vision and making it stick.
And being convicted by it. So it shouldn't be one person's vision in a school, right? Because what you do find in schools is that you've got the champion, you've got that inclusion champion, and they're pushing everything through. However, what we want to see is that, yes, there may be a lead, but where's the buy-in from the whole picture, from top down, bottom up? We need to have buy-in, and we need to think through the vision incrementally as well, because the shift that we're creating is not an overnight shift. It's actually a shift that's going to take years. It's going to take years of commitment. It's going to take years of thought. And the more that we recognize that and don't think it's just going to solve the immediate fire, the less likely we are to strategically quit it, because that's what happens. People strategically quit the vision because actually right now it's too hard to get past this particular barrier. And so, yes, understanding where we're taking it, the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan, it all sounds very cliche, but it's actually really key. Knowing where we're taking the school, knowing what we want to do, how are we responding to the changing landscape around us and within us? All of these things are really big questions that leaders have to hold on to when they're creating an inclusive system.
And again, beautifully dovetails into the next part. So for the school and multi-academy trust leaders listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, what can we share with them? What can these school and MAP leaders do themselves internally within their setting, within their environments, to try and overcome some of these challenges in regards to the complexities around SEND? So what can school and MAP leaders do themselves individually and as a setting to try and improve their SEND provision?
First of all, take a breath. It's happening for everyone. The impact is real, and it's not about getting the answer straight away. It's not about solving anything straight away. So take a minute and go, this is big. And actually, we do need to respond, and we want to respond. And that's what I love our profession for, is that we really want to take care of the children in our care. We really want to educate them. And when we realise that there's barriers, it impacts us. It does. So take that moment to see where we are individually as leaders, as teachers. That's the first place. Audit ourselves. Be really key on that. Once we've audited ourselves, audit your setting. Know what it is you're looking at. Know what it is that you really want to get under. And then once we know what the picture looks like, we can then start those incremental steps. We can say at the end of this academic year, it looks like, at the end of 5 academic years, it looks like. And we can create those incremental steps. But the first thing is to get a handle of the picture. And getting a handle of the picture means getting into the layers. So we need to talk about children, the profiles, the learning. What does it look like? We need to think about staff, the confidence, the knowledge. What does that look like? We have to think about structures, environment, all of those things. So when we're looking at auditing, we need to get underneath those layers and have an effective roadmap in front of us. Once we've got that effective roadmap, we can then start to unpick what's the first lever to pull, because that's another thing. Lots of people go straight in for curriculum, which, don't get me wrong, is actually really important. But sometimes it's not the right lever to pull because you haven't got regulated children, regulated young people. So we need to maybe put something in place that supports regulation and support before we pull the lever of curriculum. We need to know which lever to pull. So those would be some of the things that I would suggest first of all.
And obviously, as you said right from the beginning, every child is different, every school is different, every mat is different. So there's no same lever to pull. Every lever depends on the situation and the circumstance.
Yeah. So it depends upon getting that picture really clearly in our mind as leaders, and being very sure about what we want to bring together.
Yeah, and without, I don't always like to use sporting analogies, but I think there's one that's floating around my mind right now, is you need the right players on the pitch, pulling the right lever to get the results and the performances that you want. And if you have the wrong players in the wrong positions, they may have all of the great intentions in the world to pull the right
team, but
it's the but, but they just, through no fault of their own, the right lever at the right time can't be pulled.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. So it starts with the vision, understanding what's required, putting incremental steps in place, prioritizing those steps, having the right skills, attitudes, behaviors, all of those attributes along the way. Let's flip this around, Emma, to how you can personally, your organization can personally help school and mat leaders listening to the podcast today. So the Essential Education Group, how can you help school and mat leaders improve their SEND provision?
So we inspire you to act. So we inspire you to audit, consult, and train. And that's what we inspire you to do at the Essential Education Group. So through the audits, we create that vision. We create that roadmap. We look deeply into your practice. We look into what we need you to think through. And all of them are suggestions and starting points. And then if you feel like actually we would like this conversation to continue, then we walk with you through the consultancy. We walk through the steps, we talk about the levers, we talk about which one's right for you right now. We come alongside you and your staff. We walk with your school, because that's really key as well, having people with the knowledge and the right thoughts and insights to do so. And also we create training programs for you as well. So we've got bespoke training. We're accredited by the CPD company. And so we make sure that your staff is also getting those bits of information, the neuroscience, the psychology, moving learning from a macro understanding to a micro understanding, so that actually it can enrich your classrooms. And so that's really what we do at the Essential Education Groups. We support you to act through auditing, consultancy and training.
Thank you very much, Emma. And just for the audience again listening today, we worked alongside Emma for almost 3 years. And the feedback that we hear continuously is second to none. So we can absolutely highly recommend you get in touch with Emma, and you're in incredibly safe hands.
Thank you.
Emma, your website address for the listeners and the viewers to have a look at your website, please.
www.essentialeducationgroup.com. And you can find me online anywhere under Emma Pinnock. So what I like to do, because of the organisation piece, is that we book in discovery calls. So when you go to our website, you can book in a discovery call with us straight away, and it kind of helps your diary and my diary. And then we get together and we have that 15-20 minute call, and we get underneath that first conversation about what you might need and if I'm the right person for you. So that's the best way to connect with me.
Thank you, Emma. Listeners, thank you for joining us today. We hope the topic of the ever-changing landscape of send has been useful, informative, and that you've taken some really positive actions, advice, and massive amount of amazing experience. Emma, Pinnock, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.